All right, welcome back. Today we're going to dig into this really cool academic metaphor. It's called Sophia's Gardens. And trust me, it's a powerful idea that's going to challenge everything you thought you knew about what wisdom is and, how we're supposed to find it.
So, let me just start with a question for you. When you think about getting wise, what do you picture? Is it like climbing some single, towering mountain? This one long journey, one single path, all leading to the ultimate peak of truth? Because for a really long time, that was pretty much how everyone saw it.
Yeah, that whole way of thinking actually has a name. It's called the Modernist Project. And the goal was, basically, to build this one massive, towering structure of knowledge, a single, universal truth that was supposed to apply to absolutely everyone, everywhere. But what if that's just the wrong way to think about it? What if that's not the right metaphor at all?
So let's call this old model the Tower of Wisdom. For centuries, this was the standard, the established norm. It was all about a single search for a single truth. But now, it's time to check out a really compelling alternative.
Okay, so this slide really lays out the core conflict. You've got the modernist view on one side. It's all about a single universal truth. It's hierarchical, right? Like a pyramid with one point at the top. But then postmodernism comes along and just flips that whole idea on its head. It says, no, there are many truths, and they all depend on context, on where you're standing. There's no single peak to climb, but instead this huge, vast, interconnected landscape.
And that's what brings us to the alternative. So I want you to forget that cold, rigid tower for a second. Instead, let's step into Sophia's Gardens. This is the central metaphor we're going to explore today. It's a new, living, breathing way of thinking about wisdom.
So first things first, let's break down that name. Sophia, that's the ancient Greek word for wisdom. But here's the really crucial part. Its meaning has never been stable. It's what you might hear academics call a palimpsest. Think of it like an old manuscript where someone wrote something, then erased it, but not completely, and wrote something else over it, over and over again. It's just layers and layers of meaning.
And you can see how the meaning has just never been fixed. Way back in early ancient Greece, Sophia just meant like a skill or a craft. Then Plato comes along and elevates it to this grand pursuit of universal truth. Later on, you get Gnosticism, which imagines Sophia as this divine but fallible feminine figure, which is fascinating. And then Christianity transforms it again into this divine holy wisdom. So you see, it's not one stable thing. It's this long chain of contested, debated meanings. And that idea right there, that's a core postmodern concept.
Okay, so the very idea of wisdom itself is kind of shifty, right? It's unstable. So now let's look at the second half of our metaphor, the gardens. Because this is where the difference between the old tower model and this new one gets really, really clear.
When you think of a classical garden, what comes to mind? It's all about order, right? Total control. Think about the Garden of Eden, or even Plato's Academy. These are places where knowledge is supposed to be carefully cultivated, tended to, and kept pure. Everything in its right place, a perfectly harmonious, totally controlled space.
But the postmodern garden is the complete opposite. It's a place of hybridity, of fragmentation. We're not talking about a perfectly manicured lawn here. It's a diverse, messy, chaotic ecosystem. You've got native species growing right next to newcomers. And this is so important. It actually values the weeds. Those unexpected, challenging ideas that pop up and make you question what's supposed to belong in the first place.
But wait, it gets even cleverer. There's a little French twist. By using the word Jardins, the metaphor adds this whole other layer of critique, and it's aimed right at the heart of the Enlightenment. Just picture the famous gardens at Versailles in France. They are the absolute epitome of Enlightenment ideals. Perfect symmetry, strict, rigid geometry, total human control over nature. It's basically a physical manifestation of that one single truth idea, right? Rational, top-down, everything in its place.
And this is where the brilliant irony comes in. The metaphor of Sophia's Gardens completely hijacks that symbol of total control. It takes the image of one of the most rigid, ordered spaces you can imagine and uses it to argue for the exact opposite, for a model of knowledge that is fluid, messy, and totally decentralized. It's such a clever move.
This brings us to a really key postmodern term you gotta know, rhizomatic.
So unlike that single central path in a formal garden that leads you straight to one big fountain, a rhizomatic model is more like an underground root system, like ginger or grass roots. It just spreads out in all these different non-linear directions. There's no single center point. That is the structure of Sophia's Jardins.
Okay, so this has all been a little bit abstract. Let's bring it down to the practical. What does this actually mean? How does this metaphor change the way we should think about learning and growing together? I mean, how does wisdom actually grow in these gardens?
Well, the biggest thing is that this metaphor totally shifts our focus. It tells us that wisdom isn't some static product you go out and find, like an artifact in a museum. No, it's a living, ongoing process, something that has to be actively cultivated and nurtured. It's something you do, not something you have.
So what does that look like, in practice? Well, first, you've got to create a safe space, a place where those little tender shoots of new ideas can pop up without being immediately stomped on. Next, you have to actually tend to those ideas. Give them time, reflect on them. Then comes cross-pollination. You got to actively mix different perspectives together and just see what happens, what grows from it. And finally, we all have to act as gardeners for each other, right? Supporting and encouraging this whole messy but beautiful process. So the whole mission changes. The goal isn't to build that one single tower of wisdom anymore. Instead, the real goal is to cultivate this decentralized, interconnected, super diverse network of what are called situated wisdoms. Basically, truths that grow out of our own unique contexts and our shared experiences with each other.
And that brings me to the final and I think most crucial thought I want to leave you with. Look, this isn't just some abstract academic theory. It's a direct challenge to how every single one of us thinks. So the question for you is this: what are the weeds in your own thinking? What are those ideas you've dismissed or ignored, or maybe that someone told you just don't belong? Because in Sophia's Gardens, that's very often where the most valuable wisdom is just waiting to grow.